selectively working with experts that I like to work with that are really good at what they do, and importantly who like working with the mining sector, because sometimes you can get creatives or service providers who are happy to work with you, but they're not invested, or they're just, it's okay for them and they're not super into it. And I think, whatever industry you're in, it could be construction, it could be rail, it could be something, non-heavy industry. But I think if you can find partners that like what you do or are interested to learn more, they're going to get more involved in the creative process.
Welcome to Pure Gold Marketing. G'day, I'm Edwin Davis, your host. Join me in this series as I speak with marketing and communications experts from across Australian industry. We'll tap into their vast experience and wisdom to bring you valuable insights and perspectives. And of course, some interesting stories along the way. So join us on Pure Gold Marketing, where every episode is worth its weight in marketing gold. Now, welcome back to Pure Gold Marketing. Have you ever wondered about what goes into creating and producing an advertising campaign? Thinking about approvals, finding the right talent, developing the right content for the right platform? Well, today I'm speaking with someone who knows all about this. Scott Keenan is the guest today, and he is the Director of Public Affairs at the New South Wales Minerals Council. He's been in this role for 15 years and knows all about this. I'm super excited to share with you what he's got to say, so let's get into it. Welcome, Scott, to Pure Gold Marketing.
G'day, everyone. Great to be here with you, mate.
Thank you so much for coming on, Scott. Now, this is not your first appearance on a podcast or behind a microphone by any means. I'm keen to hear a little bit about all things mining and communications. But yeah, if you want to kick us off, I'm keen to hear a bit about your background from behind a microphone as well.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of practice over the years behind a microphone, and I really enjoy it. Growing up as a kid, I wanted to be on radio. It was one of those ones where it was, all I used to think about and eat and sleep radio, FM, AM, talkback, rock music, whatever was on the go. I absolutely loved it, and so it was a real kind of passion for me as a kid. Did community radio, and when I was finishing high school, I wrote to every radio station in Sydney a letter and said, I'd love to come and work with you. I had gotten into university, but I really thought I'd just rather go and work and have a crack at the job that I really want, which was to be on radio. And
Get
two stations.
Straight into it. Yeah, how'd you go?
And they wrote back to me, two of them, and said, yep, we've got a job for you. So off I went to what was formerly known as Oz Stereo, which is now Southern Cross Oz Stereo, Today FM and Triple M in Sydney, and got a job as the assistant to the personal assistant to the general manager. Straight into it, learning about all the little things that happen around radio stations, how they work. I went from answering phones and organising Friday drinks for the different teams around the stations, sitting in the producer's airlock and watching how shows are made. Within 6 months to being offered a cadetship and working in the newsroom, which was where I really wanted to be. I had a big passion for news and journalism as sport, politics, all that stuff. I used to read newspapers madly as a kid. Listen to talkback radio, and so getting a job in radio and getting stuck into that was just so exciting at such a young age, and it carried on from there.
I love that thrill of the live environment. Hey, when you got to be on your toes and prepared for anything. What did you move into? Once you'd sort of established yourself there, what was next?
Yeah, well, I worked there for a while. Ended up on air quite quickly as a journalist, as a newsreader. I worked weekends reading news on Triple M and Today FM in Sydney, which was around the time of the Sydney Olympics in 2000. So many great big stories around sport, the big bushfires that we had back in 2001. And by the age of about 20, they tapped me to go and set up a new newsroom at their radio stations in Newcastle. And it was going to what's now known as Triple M Newcastle and Hit 106.9 and setting up their new newsroom and starting a new service for those stations, and I absolutely loved it. And I got to know a lot of people around Newcastle, around the Newcastle Knights, local politicians, and one of those local politicians ended up asking me to come and work for him. It was Michael Costa, who was the Minister for the Hunter and Transport Minister, and after the 2003 state election, which I'd sort of covered as a journalist, within a couple of weeks, I was back in Sydney and working as an advisor to him as the new Minister for the Hunter, which was pretty crazy, but again, something that I'd wanted to do for a long time as a young guy. And so getting to go and work with him and with other ministers and other senior people in government was really exciting. It was meaningful too because, state governments deliver services, and I went from a journalist to working out pretty quickly how things in the real world work.
How did you then get into the mining industry and where you are now at the New South Wales Minerals Council?
Yeah, well, look, it was a little bit of a fluke or a bit by luck, really. I kind of fell into it. After Sydney Ferries, I moved to the UK for a couple of years where I helped the Guardian Media Group set up a new radio station in Manchester. It was a rock radio station similar to what I'd worked at in Triple M. And I went over there not to do that, but for a change of scene and to hang out with family and just to do something a bit different. Ended up getting work in radio and eventually helping the Guardian Media Group set up this station, which was awesome. Came back and was looking for a role, and I guess you look for things that you're experienced in and where you can make a bit of a difference. And I had a recruitment consultant say, hey, what about this job at the New South Wales Minerals Council? And honestly, I didn't even really know what it was, I don't think, back then. I asked some questions and I said, look, happy to go and talk to them and have a chat about it. And the next thing you know, I'm the media advisor at the New South Wales Minerals Council, and that was 15 years ago.
So you've been at the Minerals Council for 15 years now, Scott. What kind of changes have you seen over that time, I guess, both in terms of the platforms used and the type of content that you need to develop for those platforms?
It's completely different. I mean, I think back to 2009, I was an early adopter on what was called Twitter and now X, which I'm no longer on. And these platforms, as you say, have emerged over this period, really. Facebook was in its infancy. It wasn't even really something that was considered a place where companies and corporations and organisations would communicate. These were personal communication channels. I had to fight and really convince my organisation when I joined to have a voice on Twitter, to interact directly with people. That had never been done before, and the idea of connecting with or correcting people or trying to engage in a positive way with people who were criticising the industry or didn't know about it or were concerned, and talking to them directly through these platforms was just so foreign. The idea that you could do that was not something that my organisation at the time would really, really wanted to do or did do, but they did. We did take it on, and since that time, so much change, so much direct interaction with consumers, not just through the platforms, but what we say, marketing budgets, and having the commitment to campaign and to communicate as an industry to the wider community in New South Wales, and it's happening nationally as well, about the industry, and to tell stories and to not be scared to show who we are, because I think for a long time, in some quarters of the industry, and this happens not just in mining but in a lot of businesses, the idea is to keep your head down and to not make waves and to not be a target. But I think we all know in sort of this modern world that we're living in, and with the communications channels that we have available to us now, you've got to position your brand. You've got to be able to tell people what you stand for, who you are, what your values are, and what people need to know about you. Because if you don't tell them, somebody else will. They'll fill the void, and they're effectively taking your share of voice.
So it sounds like the council has quite an impact around both policy and communicating and connecting with stakeholders. I know community engagement is quite a big role for the council to be engaging with the community and helping build trust and rapport and just communicating about what's going on in the industry. Can you touch on that as well? What's it like in terms of building that trust and engagement? How important have you found that? And what sort of response have you seen from the community?
Yeah, I suppose for us as an industry body, there's only so much we can do. I guess we represent the industry, and so how we position our brand, how we talk about what the industry does, how we educate and communicate, with the public, but educate people about what the industry does is a really important supplementary role that we can play. Mining companies themselves they're the operators. They're the ones who are engaging directly with their local neighbours, with their local communities. They've got people that are responsible for that work directly, as well as everybody that works in mining. Really, I guess we've all got a responsibility because we're all representing our industry, our companies, and ourselves working in the sector. So, how we communicate and how we present to people, both in the community on a personal level, but also professionally, is super important. And so that's something that we can all consider if we're working in the sector. But for us as the industry body, our advertising, our communications on social media, our media commentary, it all sets the tone really for how people understand our industry. And I think that's really important because not everyone is going to love mining. It's not necessarily something that everybody feels they can be super supportive for. But if we can help to increase the understanding about our industry, to be transparent about what we do and how we do it, we're going to have a better chance of more Australians understanding and accepting the industry and feeling more confident that we're world class, that we are good at what we do, that we've got some of the best people in the world, some of the best mining operations in the world, and that they can feel confident that we do what we say, that we're mining responsibly for today and tomorrow, which is really important. We do have a couple of programs. One of them is really long running, the Upper Hunter Mining Dialogue, which I should give a shout out to. It's been going for sort of 12, 13, 14 years. And it's a bit of an industry first where we've been coordinating on behalf of the whole industry in the Hunter Valley a engagement program to address the concerns that the community has there around the practicalities of mining, where about 10, 12, 14 years ago, there was a big burst of development and a growth in the sector. And from that came, a number of cumulative impacts from all of some of these bigger mines coming online at the same time. And it was our role, and we've developed it over time, this way of communicating and collaborating together where you've got 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 mines all together there, operating together, but in this way communicating and engaging together. And that's been really, really successful, and it's ongoing because we see the important value of transparent communications and engagement, addressing people's concerns.
Oh, that's fantastic to be sort of engaging at that such a deep and personal level.
Yeah.
Of course, you're being a content creator and in media. I assume part of your role is also around helping tell the stories from the mining side. How have you found the role, I guess, of storytelling, of creating content, media content, in helping change the perceptions and increase awareness of the industry?
Yeah, look, I think in a practical sense over the last few years there's been a change, and even in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years, the way I think about it has changed a lot. We used to think about traditional advertising. We thought about the channels, so TV advertising, radio advertising, print advertising, so newspapers, and reaching audiences through those traditional channels. And we still do use those channels, but I think now we think, and I think a lot more about the message and about the content and about the feeling that we want to leave people. It's not just about communicating a message; it's about a feeling as well. And so, a lot of thought goes into that. It's you're thinking about the message and the concerns maybe that you're trying to address that have been identified, or the thing that the industry thinks is important that it wants to communicate. You also got to think about the talent. Who is the right person to help you communicate some of this stuff, and what are the right channels? It's changed significantly over the last 10 years, as I was saying, and you mentioned earlier. And social media increasingly important. Podcasts like this super important too. The channels have definitely changed.
And I think the thing with storytelling, that's one thing that we're often educating our clients with, is that it's not just about telling, saying, look how good our machine is, or we are doing this, but it's actually telling a story like you would read in a novel or see on a TV show, that it has a beginning, it has the ups and downs of different elements in it, and then an ending and a culmination. And so trying to show the different parts of a story, because that's what people, we all sit down, and whether it's watching Netflix or reading a novel, everyone loves a story. And so to be able to put that into the mining context, I think is super powerful, rather than just shoving content down people's throat in that way. So I guess, you touched on, finding the right stories. How do you go about finding those right stories that are worth sharing?
Yeah, and look, I probably should have said there, I think the other thing that's really important is purpose. So content and storytelling's got to have a purpose, whether it's an overarching campaign like ones that we run, or some business reason for having communications. Just doing Facebook or doing Instagram because you think you need to is kind of a ridiculous proposition. Any good communication needs to have a purpose, and so if you can be single-minded about why you're creating the content, and that the content or content series or multiple pieces of content ladder back up to that reason for existing, that purpose for doing it, and the outcome that you're trying to achieve, you're going to be a better chance of making something that has an impact. And then you can work out, if you have a purpose for a campaign, or you have a business objective you're trying to reach, then you can rule in and out pretty quickly. Well, what types of stories do I want to tell? If somebody's saying to you in your business or in your industry, oh, we think you should be telling stories about how many jobs there are. Well, that might be well and good, and there might be lots of jobs, but does that help you reach the sort of the business or the organisational goal that you're trying to achieve? And if it doesn't, then you shouldn't do it. And if it does, then by all means go ahead and work out what the story is that sits around that, and find somebody that can help you sort of tell that story. But you've got to have a purpose, and you've got to make sure that every content piece, every piece of advertising, every piece of communication ladders back to that and isn't being delivered because of the channel, which I was talking about earlier, which I think it's a distinction you've got to make when you're creating campaigns and communications and telling stories.
Yeah, I'm keen to hear about some of the campaigns that you've been working on, but I want to ask first, in terms of, I guess, the broader, like the video format or the medium of video, what makes that such a powerful medium? What do you see that makes it worthwhile using video as a platform to tell these stories?
Oh, video is incredibly important, and it's, I'm an audio guy, like I love audio, but you can create feeling visually so much better than you can through audio alone or through print. Video has so many different elements that allow, you can cut it, and you can cut it so many different ways. You can use different production styles, you can use lighting, you can use music, you can use different people to tell stories personally or about work, or you can combine them. There are different formats now as well. There's, the wide format for television, and for cinema and storytelling and YouTube, and then there's sort of the vertical stuff for social media, and they each have their own purpose. And I think it is extremely powerful because it allows you to connect. It allows you to kind of clock people's eyes to see what they're saying, and to connect with them visually in a way that you can't maybe in some other formats. I think the other thing that is relevant here is that we can show what we do. So most people will never, ever, ever get to step inside the gate of a mine. And, if you take the Hunter Valley as an example, or say Orange in the Central West, if you're flying from Sydney to Brisbane, you might fly over the Hunter Valley and see those pits and kind of get a real bird's eye glimpse for a couple of minutes. And for most people, that's more than they'll ever see about our industry. But of course, there's so much more to it, and you don't get to see from that bird's eye view the rehabilitation, the water recycling, the land management, and all of the care that goes into operating those mines responsibly and safely. And so I've found in all of the research that I've done, and in the most successful video format campaigns, that being able to show people, to pull back the curtain on our industry, is by far and away the most effective way of increasing awareness, educating people, and improving acceptance and support over time. Because people want to be shown. They don't want to be told what you're doing. They don't want to know what target you're planning to hit, how much production you're going to do in 3 years, how much you're going to reduce your emissions by 2050. They do not care. What consumers, especially people in Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne, places where there aren't mining operations, what they want to know is, show me what you're doing, give me confidence that you're good at what you're doing, give me reasons to believe that you are what you say you are in New South Wales, mining responsibly for today and tomorrow. So we're all about showing people and giving those many, many examples, and video's the most powerful way to do it.
It is. It's such a powerful way, hey. And I think, like you mentioned, people are curious, to like peel back the layers, and whether it's seeing, what someone's job actually looks like, what they're doing with their hands, or to see a machine in action. Humans are naturally curious, and I think that's one reason I love my job is just the opportunities that we get to see that a lot of other people we can only share through the video. But it's so cool to be able to spotlight and showcase those kind of operations and sites with other people, and show the community how it's done.
But I think the difference is. I think the difference is that we need to also, in the industry, keep putting ourselves in the shoes of the consumer, the person you're trying to reach. So if you're trying to reach a local community member, they're going to be a little bit more educated about the industry. They're going to be open to seeing something more technical, or not need that kind of base level entry in terms of sort of explaining what we're doing. But having worked in the industry for 15 years, sometimes in jobs like ours, it's easy to get caught up in jargon, in acronyms, in things that we intrinsically know that we forget we might need to communicate. And I think it's super important when you're communicating really anything about industry is to assume that most people don't really know anything about it. They may have some knowledge, but in most cases they don't, and where you can come at it from that level. And it doesn't mean dumbing down, it just means being open and transparent and thinking about, well, if I didn't know anything about this, what would I like to know? What would I like to see, and how can I show it to those people in a way that will help them better understand what we're about?
I think we even see that, like when in the videos we're creating, when you are using everyday language. You're not trying to fit 10 messages into a 2-minute video, but you're just talking simply 1 or 2 key messages. You're going to get a lot better results.
I might have done that once or twice before. I've made those mistakes.
Oh, we all have. Tell me more about the responsible mining campaign. How that's still going, is it?
Yeah, look,
or has that been going for the last few years?
Yeah, so it's been going 3 years, and it was a bit of a shift for us and for our industry. So in New South Wales, and we've been running campaigns for a long time. When I say campaigns, I mean advertising campaigns on traditional media, above the line, investing in our brand and in communicating to the public about what mining is about. But what I was seeing in the data, we do regular research, and focus groups. We obviously also get feedback, through our social channels and other channels. And what I was seeing was that, some of the advertising and the communications we were doing weren't addressing concerns about in some demographics. So particularly amongst women in metropolitan areas, this campaign aims to really address what they've been saying to us for some time, which is, like, I'm concerned about the environment. I'm concerned, and I don't know enough about what mining is doing. I hear things, I see things, but I want to hear from you. And it's the first campaign that I've been responsible for that aims to address directly some of those concerns. It still is about positioning the brand. It's about showing what we're about, but it aims with a bit more purpose to address the concerns that some of those demographics and groups in the community have had. And that's led to a different type of creative, a different way of working. So instead of working with a traditional ad agency, I've changed the way that I work and the sort of the model of work. But it's also led to different types of communication and different outcomes as well. We're seeing more acceptance of the industry, better understanding, and there is actually really good support for mining in New South Wales, and this campaign, whilst not the only reason for it, it is helping to sort of sustain support, because people are better understanding what the industry is about by, I guess, we're addressing the things that they want to hear about, and so when they see that, they're more open to sort of receiving other information from us as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more about, like, the creative. You mentioned both the creative and the different model. Are you still working with agencies, or are you taking a different approach there? And what are some of the creative decisions that you're making that you found have worked? Yeah,
I guess working in the industry for a long time and doing this type of work for a long time now, I've worked out who I like to work with, who's good at what, and what's the best way for me to work to get the best outputs, the best types of communication out there. And when you've done something for a long time too, you grow in confidence. You've got your own knowledge. I've got great networks within the industry, and so and I'm a storyteller. I guess I started as a journalist and started in radio and with that love of kind of the audio medium. But really, I guess what I did like was listening to people talk and hearing stories, and that's just something that I've now, a skill and an area that I've worked on and that I've developed over time. And so I've realised that sometimes it isn't always best to work with big agencies who are, in big cities, who don't necessarily understand the industry. And having worked in mining now for 15 years, I've got a pretty good handle on it. And about 3 years ago, I did decide to change the way that I work. And I guess I've assembled a campaign team. I've got, we've got a couple of people in our team internally, and I've got a bit more of a handle myself on strategy, on writing the creative, on leading the direction around all of that. And then selectively working with experts that I like to work with, that are really good at what they do. And importantly, who like working with the mining sector, because sometimes you can get creatives or service providers who are happy to work with you, but they're not invested, or they're just, it's okay for them and they're not super into it. And I think, whatever industry you're in, it could be construction, it could be rail, it could be something, non-heavy industry. But I think if you can find partners that like what you do or are interested to learn more, they're going to get more involved in the creative process. And so I've got a good team of people who I work with, I guess, in a campaign team, independent consultants who bring what they're good at, media buyers, social media experts, a small production team, a campaigns consultant, and then the team that I work with. And then, of course, all the really great experts in the mining companies as well who I work with. But what I've got from this now is a much more flexible arrangement. We can be so much more agile. We are more, I think we're more creative now, not having a creative agency, because we're in charge of our own storytelling. We bring that agility, working across a bunch of different channels, and I guess working just with more confidence because we know we're responsible. It's not an agency, and so the time we're not spending briefing them, trying to get them up to speed, we spend investing in good ideas and great stories and getting the best people from the mining industry to help us tell those stories. And so that's probably a bit of a different way of working, certainly from how I worked previously, but I'm finding it's much more fruitful, much more enjoyable, and I think the content sort of speaks for itself. It's much better.
That's awesome. Tell me more about the campaign in terms of the actual production. How do you go about finding the right talent, finding the right people to appear in the video, whether it's for this campaign or any video project that you're doing?
I think like any good kind of comms professional, you want to get to know your business, and in my case, it's like knowing the mining companies, right? So there's not many mines in New South Wales that I haven't been to multiple times, and getting around those mines and getting around those communities, the Singleton, Muswellbrook, Orange, Wollongong, Parks, you get to know the people, and whether that's people in the community or at the mines, people running them, or people at the coalface. And so over that time, you end up with a little black book somewhere in the back of your head, and names get added to it every now and then. Sometimes it's friends you add on LinkedIn or Instagram. Sometimes it's somebody that wins an award at a New South Wales Mining Awards event, somebody who maybe spoke at one of our conferences, or just someone that I bumped into out on a shoot, and they get added to that list. And then often that's how I kind of land the talent. I get to meet all these people and just kind of work out who's good at what. So there are some people, for example, who I've found that have been excellent talent for TV ads, because they have a certain gravitas, or they speak comfortably in short bursts, or maybe they are going to be really great at social media content because, for example, they are a recent graduate of university, working as an engineer or environmental scientist at one of our mining companies, and they may have spoken at one of our careers dinners. And so they've got this kind of youthful energy. They're happy to kind of talk off the top of their head a bit, engage with younger people. And I'm like, I see you. I think you could be good at social media.
And so you're finding this all out before the shoot as well, is that right?
Absolutely. So, a couple of things. One is I've got my black book. And if I don't know, who I'm looking for, then I'll go to the mining companies and say, hey, this is the type of person I'm looking for. This is the sort of profile of person. These are the skills that I need them to have to help me deliver this type of content. But then once I've kind of got a bit of a feel for them, we also, we do pre-production with them. So, and this is something that I've done more in the last couple of years, and it does mean you end up with better content at the end because you know the strengths and weaknesses of the person. If you speak to them before the shoot, if you have a couple of video calls, if you get them to record something on their phone and show us how you talk when you're out in the wild, what do you actually like as a person, and where do you live, what are your interests, we get to know these people. And so before even out on site, we've got a rapport, which is really important, but we also we know a bit about them, so we can draw on their experience, their expertise, the stuff that they're into in their personal life, and it can actually feed into the content series, the creative and the campaigns. The other thing that it does when you're working with talent, particularly for me when they're not my colleagues, they're not in my company, so I'm having to build this rapport in advance, and if I don't already know them, they're not sort of friendly with me, I need to do that. But it means that when you get there on the shoot, hopefully they're already at ease. They know who you are, they know what you're about, they know what my expectations are for the content and what it is that I'm trying to produce, and it gives you a better chance at creating something that's going to work and that they're going to be comfortable delivering. Because as much as we as comms experts, we like to tell people what to do, and I just look down the barrel and just say this and just say it one more time, and they're like, oh God, I've already said it 50 times, but
just say a little bit slower.
Yeah, exactly right. Oh, can you just look over that way and just pause on that word for me? I mean, I must drive people absolutely crazy, but the most important thing is that they're comfortable with you because they know what you're doing and why you're doing it, that they feel like you've put them at ease, and that they know that no matter what they do, only the good stuff's going to get used. And also, I guess that you've got the best intentions and their welfare and kind of their interests at heart, because you want them to look good, and in this case, and often with any kind of company comms, these people are helping you out. They're not comms experts, they're not ex-radio people or TV people, they're just people that are doing their job, and they are helping you, and so you've got to help them to be the best they can be, so that you've got a great message and a great content piece to be able to help position the company or deliver the message that you're trying to deliver in your campaign.
Oh, that's so powerful. I think that building that trust and rapport with people, not only on the shoot but beforehand as well, building that connection, making people feel at ease. What about in terms of planning for these shoots for the campaign, in terms of getting approvals on site, working with the mining operators and the mine sites? How do you go about that, and what kind of lead times have you typically needed for planning a shoot?
Yeah, we work really closely with all of the mining companies, and all of them are different. You probably experienced this as well. Some that are smaller maybe can be more flexible and agile, and have really quite simple approvals processes, and can leave a lot of the creative kind of ideas and direction to you. And others maybe that are bigger or have comms people and external affairs people who have particular ideas about how this stuff should be done, need more time working together to plan and to deliver the sort of the strategic development of it before you go out to shoot. So it's a little bit of horses for courses, but by far and away, I've found in New South Wales, or I've predominantly worked, that mining and resources companies here and the companies that support our sector are incredible. They want to get behind our organisation. They want to tell stories about the industry, and they do want to be advocates. They do want to get out in front of the camera, on the radio, in the newspaper, and on social media, of course, and tell people what the industry is about, to explain their jobs. And so it's that's a good starting point often. But it's a simple process. It's identifying the talent. It's explaining to the comms representatives or the mine general manager or the head of the business what the purpose of the content is, where it's going to go, why we've chosen that person to shoot it, and just to work with them to make them comfortable, and then same with the talent, so that they're all on the same page. And look, in terms of time and how we do that, it's often done through my team in my office. It's done directly. I don't really outsource talent production. and sort of pre-production, it's usually done in-house. And it can be done anywhere from sort of 2 weeks beforehand to a few months in advance, depending on the time of year and how big a production that we're aiming to do. I mean, sometimes we can go out and shoot for a day, but sometimes we've done shoots for 5 or more days, depending on what it is that we're trying to shoot. A TV ad and sort of advertising content series around a TV ad concept usually takes us around 3 days to shoot, including travel time. But we did a shoot recently of 5 days for social media content where we weren't doing TV or radio. We were just shooting vertical videos and stills for social media, and we got, at least 50 content pieces. We went around to a couple of different mines and just went wild. And, we had done pre-production with everybody that we saw. In fact, we even did at one of the mines a pre-production visit where we spent a whole day getting to know all of the people that the mining company had identified for us to speak to, and just sat down and had a chat with them, got to know them. Where did they work before? What did they do now? What's their expertise? What's a day like in their job? And that was super fruitful. Like, that was really, really worthwhile and a bit of an eye-opener for me about like the power of pre-production and getting to know people and their jobs in advance, because the content afterwards meant we could go away and we planned some really great content pieces that we could effectively shoot and deliver so much more quickly than if we just turned up, which we had done at previous shoots a couple of years ago. Just going, what's your name, and what do you do, and can you tell us about that? And you're filming, and I'm just thinking, this is not that compelling. And we've come a long way, even in sort of 18 months now, where we've got hooks at the start of our videos. We're giving people a reason to watch them, and we're helping the talent to deliver compelling messages in 15, 20, 30 seconds in a way that even 18 months ago we weren't anywhere near. And part of that is, where social media has gone in that time, but also, I guess, our evolution and development and focusing on getting really good at that so that we can deliver content where people are, because people are increasingly watching videos on social media, on Reels and TikTok, and we want to reduce the friction points between where the consumer is and where they're getting the information. And if we are trying to send them off to a website or to do some other action, you've lost them. You've got to get them in the channel where they are. And by producing content in those channels, I think we're certainly reaching a lot more people in the millions and multiple times, but I think we're also being a lot more effective.
Oh, it's super impressive what you're doing, you and the team, Scott. And I think a lot of people in the industry are watching what the New South Wales Minerals Council are doing and taking note of it. And I think it allows others to open up and share similar content. You're seeing a lot of that, like you said, that story-based, where you're highlighting and showcasing people in the industry, their stories or what they get up to. And, the content I've seen that you've produced, people always look so relaxed, and I guess it is part of forming that trust with them beforehand. Do you have any tips when it does come to shooting, in terms of from your radio and media background, in terms of making people feel comfortable on camera or presenting to camera? Any hot tips for those playing at home?
Yeah, look, I think explaining the process in a really clear, simple way is very, very important, so that when the talent is doing what they're doing, or when you're asking them to do it, they already know what you're going to ask them to do, because you've explained very clearly what the equipment is, where they're going to be standing, what they're going to be doing, how many times. We're going to ask you to do this 50 different times, but please persist with us. But I think being super clear about what it is that they're going to be doing, and putting them at ease by telling them that you're only going to be using the good stuff, and hopefully making them laugh a little bit at the start. That's what puts people at ease, knowing that we appreciate that they are mining professionals, not communications professionals and performers. Some of them could be. Some of them are incredible storytellers and really great performers on camera. But if you make them feel as though that it's not important that they perform, but just that they be themselves, suddenly you can see the weight come off their shoulders. You can have a bit more fun with them, and that's what comes across in the end content. So that would be my main tip, just to explain the process so that people can feel confident that you're not going to surprise them, and that they know what's coming.
Oh, that's fantastic. And when it comes to creating content, particularly for Reels, for Instagram, for social content, where you're filming in that tall format, what sort of approach are you taking there? Are you just using a smartphone? Is that someone from your team doing that? Or do you have a production crew that are there capturing that content on professional equipment? What's the approach there, and what have you found works well?
This is changing all of the time, but one thing I do know is that people, especially younger people, but most people are more confident filming on a phone, because we've all got phones, we're all using them all the time, and it's a lot less intimidating than a big professional camera, even a DSLR. So that's something to keep in mind if you're working with talent who are new or that you haven't done much media with before. I'd urge everybody to think about how you can use phones to your advantage, because they are so much less intimidating. You can use remote control microphones now, that you can hold in your hand, that you can attach here, that you can clip straight into your phone, and you can get great quality audio, which is really, really important, that goes with the high quality footage that you can shoot in vertical format on your phone, and end up with content that I think works really well for those channels, because it looks like it's been shot on a phone, as well as the fact that it has been and is less intimidating than a camera. And I think that can be a really good way to create for those channels. We also do on our shoots, we also tend to have some quality DSLR and other cameras to shoot B-roll too, which I think there's different ways that you can create your vertical content. I personally like creating content that looks amazing, and I think you've got to find that balance between what looks rough and ready and shot on a camera, and stuff that feels like you're being drawn into something kind of behind the scenes, as well as something that can look quite cool as well. And having those variety of production styles and shooting styles, I think, is important and can help make things look different and interesting for us as content creators. So we will, they're probably the three things that we're thinking about in terms of like styles of production. So shooting predominantly on phones for vertical, got to have great audio, and using cameras for B-roll. I think as well, though, thinking about then how you're producing. So you can shoot with a talent with the phone in their hand, selfie style. You can shoot for them. They can hold a wireless microphone up here. They can have it down here. They can be clipped on with a lapel, and all of those different ways of producing it can give it a different type of look. And so, they're the sorts of things that you want to think about, as well as the stories that you're telling.
Fantastic. Thanks for those tips, Scott. Always interesting to hear how others are doing it and the different results you're getting. Now, the New South Wales Minerals Council, I know you're also sponsors of the Newcastle Knights NRL team. I'm from Queensland, so I can't comment too much on the past season. But keen to hear more about how did you get into sponsoring the Knights? What sort of value do you see there as an organisation sponsoring another organisation like that?
Yeah, the New South Wales Minerals Council has been a sponsor of the Newcastle Knights for 13 years, so it's a long time. It's one of the most, I think, iconic and different and unusual sponsorships in all of professional sport, certainly in this country, where once a year the Newcastle Knights wear a full takeover strip. So instead of wearing their traditional red and blue strip, they wear a replica mining jersey. So the high-vis orange, navy blue, and even the reflective strips on their jersey, their shorts. They wear bright orange socks, and there's nothing more compelling and loud and proud as that jersey on a footy field, and showing the people that work in mining and that work in and around the industry across New South Wales, but around regional Australia, that you work in an industry that you can be proud of. You can be proud of what you do. You can be proud of the people that you work with, and your families can be proud of you too. And that was the main reason why we started the sponsorship in the first place back in 2012, 2013. The industry was going through a bit of a tricky period. There were some jobs being lost. Financially, it was a little bit more challenging. Commodity prices were low, and there was some uncertainty about a number of project approvals for existing mines to be extended, and for jobs that may or may not have been lost if those approvals weren't granted by the state government. And so people weren't feeling great, and we thought, well, this is a good way to kind of, for us as the industry representative, to show people in the industry that we're thinking of you. You can be proud of what you do, and let's sort of rally around each other and our industry. And it was such a big success that we've carried it on all these years. Mine workers and their families turn up to the game in the high-vis jerseys. Fans wear the colours for that round as well. And in the last few years, we've also sponsored the women's team in the NRLW. We've expanded our partnership so that we're sponsoring both women's and men's rugby league at the Knights. And boy, that's been pretty fruitful as well, given that the women's team have won 2 premierships in the NRLW, and that's been amazing to be a part of. We were the first sponsor to come on board as the inaugural sponsor of the NRLW team for the Knights. So that's something we're really proud of, especially as we see more women coming into the mining industry in New South Wales. But it is a compelling, proposition as a partnership and a platform to be able to tell stories about mining. There are an incredible number of current and former players that either have a connection to the industry or have actually worked in the industry. And I could rattle off a list, but there are many. But having that connection gives us the ability to kind of tell positive stories in a way that if we weren't involved in the team and in the club and in that partnership, we wouldn't have those platforms and those advocates for our industry. So that's really interesting and exciting for us as a content team each year, looking ahead to that game and thinking about, well, how do we bring that to life each year? How do we tell stories? How do we use the players to help get people excited about that jersey and to hear what they think about it? It's an incredible platform, and we've just signed a new 3-year deal, and I think it's going to continue for a very long time because, when you think about Newcastle, you think about mining, and you think about the Newcastle Knights.
Yeah, no, it's so cool to see the excitement when it is the mining round, and you hear of others in the industry keen to get down, check the game out, and dress up. So that's very cool. Scott, do you have any tips or advice in terms of communications strategies or approaches for other marketing professionals or comms professionals in the industry at all?
Yeah, look, this is the only thing I've made some notes for because there was a couple of things I did want to get across. I think a couple of things. The first one is just be real. That's what people want now in communications, but it's probably something that I've tried to do all along. I think back to my very first days at Triple M in Sydney, and a really awesome manager and mentor that I had, a really great journalist called Alison Drower, who I think is still on radio in Canberra. I'm not 100% sure, but she was a legend back in the 90s, and she always said to me just to speak like a normal person. Don't put on a news voice. Don't use words that you wouldn't ordinarily use in conversation. And that's the way that I've always tackled any comms project, any press release, any video, anything that I've done since then. That has put me in good stead. And I think what she was really saying was just be real, be yourself. And I think that's advice that we can give to the people who are fronting the communications content that we're all creating as content creators and marketers. So that would be my first one. Another one that I've kind of picked up along the way from another mentor, a guy that I still work with, is to be single-minded with your purpose. So, like you were saying earlier, I think it's easy, and sometimes non-comms people in our mining companies and in our businesses feel the need to we got to get all these messages in there. We've got to say 10 different things. You don't. You really just want to say one thing, because most people really only have time to consume that one message or that one feeling. What's that one thing you're really trying to get across? And I think wherever you can be single-minded, either with an overarching campaign or a small singular content piece, you're going to be a much better chance of actually being successful in communicating that one thing, because you're being single-minded. And then the other thing is to think about your audience. And I think this is something that people in marketing and comms probably don't do enough. And I think where you're under-resourced, or where there's maybe only one or two of you and you're trying to cover lots of channels and lots of stakeholders, that you can sometimes fall into the trap of trying to create something that covers off everybody, and really what you end up doing is you satisfy nobody. So don't do a one-size-fits-all. Think about your audience and create content for your specific audiences. So whether it's social media, and there might be stakeholders on there who have an interest in your company or your industry. The local media and the local community, they're going to have different needs. Government or regulators would have a different kind of take on what they want to hear from you, as well as your employees. These are all different stakeholders, and you cannot treat them as a one size fits all. And I really do think the same applies for media. Do not grab a TV ad and shove it in social media. Likewise, probably don't take what you've done on social and stick it on TV. It might work, but less likely to. And I've realized this more and more with particularly our social content and each of the channels. And even within channels, you look at like Instagram, where you've got Reels, the feed, and stories. They're all completely different. And I think that presents an opportunity where you can create content for each of those channels and be effective, because you're being single-minded about that channel and about how to be best effective there.
I think sometimes there's like I don't know if desperation is too strong a word, but it's like, quick, we've got this opportunity to make this video, we've got to fit everything in one go, and we've only got this limited budget, and people end up cramming everything into one. But actually it gives a much more confident approach if people lay off and just, like you said, keep it simple, one theme per video that's specific for that format or that size, and it comes across as an air of confidence and clarity that actually just increases the engagement by so much more than trying to do it all in one, and fingers crossed, hope for the best.
Yeah, I heard one of your the previous guests that you had on the pod from Westtrack talking about the different channels that they operate in and how differently they segment their content. And I think that's really quite clever, because not every, even on social media, not each of the channels are going to want to see the same thing. So that is something to bear in mind. And I think that was pretty smart, and a really great way to approach it.
Finally, Scott, do you have any thoughts in terms of where you see communications trends heading, whether it is for the B2B space or mining in particular? We've talked a bit about sort of TikTok and Instagram Reels. Is it heading just more and more that way, or do you see any other evolutions happening around as well?
Oh, I mean, LinkedIn is even going in on Reels now. They're all these channels are prioritizing vertical video, and it cannot be ignored. And I think even if you're a small to medium-sized, mining or services or rail or construction business, I don't think you can ignore those channels anymore, because that's how you position your business to your stakeholders. It's how you position your business to potential new employees if you're trying to attract and retain people. That's how you show your culture. It's how you show what you stand for, what your benefits are of coming to work with your company. I think if you kind of ignore these channels at your peril now. You don't have to be like creating content every single day, but people will be searching for you if they're looking for somewhere to work, or if they've heard something about you in the media, or if they've got a concern, they might go and check you out on Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok. And if you're not there, they're going to go looking for something else. Or if you're creating content in those channels that doesn't meet their needs, they're going to be thrown or get the wrong idea. And I think, I think getting into those channels, again, not for the sake of it, but to have content there that positions your business, lets people know what you stand for and what your values are, is really, really important. And I think it's going to keep going that way. Wide format is not dead. Netflix and Amazon have added, paid ad tier subscriptions to their platforms now. So, advertising is not going anywhere. It's just moving from one platform to another. To some of these global players, Facebook advertising, Instagram, TikTok, Netflix and Prime, as I said, those wide format ads will still be a great way to tell stories and beautiful visuals. But you've got these different channels now too, where you can connect a little more one-on-one and go a bit more behind the scenes through some of those vertical channels as well.
We've found that as well. We've had a lot of clients who are creating reels and a lot of content that's either been a mix of user-generated or generated by their teams as well. And we're now also providing almost like content packs where they're getting a dozen or 2 dozen clips content that we've shot and colour graded, but then they're able to basically pick and choose and re-edit themselves into reels and whatnot. So that can kind of work in well with alongside other content that they're putting up. But definitely that vertical format is here to stay, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think have a crack if you're not doing it already. Just have a play and see what you can come up with, because you haven't got a lot to lose. I mean, you got to be careful, like with any comms, but I think people are prepared to see mistakes and they want to see you having a go, because it's, I guess, back to my earlier tip, it just shows you being real.
Well, Scott, I think we might wrap things up there. I want to say a huge thank you for your time on the podcast today. I've been really interested to hear your practical insights and tips in terms of the campaigns that you've been running, how you've been taking ownership of the communications, not sort of overly outsourcing things and putting your hands up, but you know your channel well, you know your audience well, and I see that come through in the content that you've been a part of. Really good to hear some of your tips around that as well, and as well as your dulcet tones from Radioland. So thank you so much for coming on, and really appreciate your time, Scott.
Yeah, lovely, mate. Thank you, and thanks for the work that you're doing, telling stories about the mining industry in Australia. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for listening. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Hit the subscribe button to get more marketing gold. And also, please share this episode with your colleagues who might find this interesting. You can always find me, Edwin Davis, on LinkedIn, or search Pure Gold Films to find out more about our video production and content services for the Australian industry. Thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next episode.